welcome back to Soulful Wahine. If you're new here, I'm your host, Keholani, and if you've been rocking with me for a while now, thank you so much. Today's episode is going to be a little different compared to my other episodes. I'm not here to educate or therapize anyone. I just want to talk story. I want to bring it back to me, to share who I am and how I've had to unlearn so many things to become the woman that I am today. Since I've been dropping episodes, I have gotten so many messages from you all asking to get to know me more, and not the therapist me, not the educator me, but the real me. And so I wanted to take time today to make an episode to kind of just address some things, and open that door up. And so today's episode is not about tips or techniques, but rather just me telling my truth. Because before I was a therapist, I was a daughter. I was a born and raised Maui girl. I was a student that was just trying to find my place and my way in life. And even though I've grown so much since then, I had to unlearn a lot to get here. I feel very lucky and feel very blessed to be able to say that I was someone that did not grow up in survival mode. I was allowed to be a kid, and I was raised in love, laughter, and the kind of warmth that makes you feel and believe that anything is possible. If you know me personally, you know that I cherish my family more than anything. And I am very selective about who I bring around my family. And it's because of this type of love and warmth that I was raised in. I am very fortunate to have a mother who has consistently and constantly poured into me my entire life. She has always and continues to remind me that I am capable, that I am creative, and that I am meant for more. And one thing that I have been able to recognize, like as a grown woman now, is my mom seen me before I ever seen myself. And at the same time, I also grew up watching someone that I love struggle and wrestle with his own pain. My father struggles with alcoholism, and while there was so much love and fun contributed to my childhood because of him, there was also a lot of heaviness. And this heaviness shaped how I learned to listen. It shaped how I learned how to hold space for others. And it kind of shaped how I dealt with my own emotions. The quiet pain, the quiet struggle that was taking place in my household with my dad's alcoholism is what led me to social work. This is where I learned how to care deeply, where I learned how to notice the things that people don't say. And it's why I do the work that I do with compassion and not judgment. As I spoke on last episode, I had the amazing privilege of being able to work for an agency that allowed me to work firsthand with folks who were dealing with addiction. And for me, I always tell people, I was like, that definitely was my hardest job. However, at the same time, I do not regret that job whatsoever, because me having my own experiences with my dad and his alcoholism, and then having that job of working with other people who were experiencing addiction, whether it be to alcohol or other substances, it very much humbled me, because it really taught me and shown me that addiction, the way I view addiction, is really just that someone has some type of pain that they don't know how to get rid of, don't know how to deal with. And that addiction is the best way that they know how to deal with it. And so for me, not only was it amazing because it really sharpened my skills as a therapist, it was also amazing because that job provided a lot of healing for my inner child. That job provided a lot of understanding, a lot of empathy, a lot of grace for younger Keholani. And I'm sorry that I'm like looking off to the sides and all that. Whenever I talk about my dad, it's a very touchy subject. But yeah. And even now, even though he is still struggling with his addiction, I still hold so much love and compassion and care for my dad because his pain planted purpose within me. His pain gave me a reason to go out and learn things, go out and learn about mental health and learn how to do things differently so that way I don't find myself in similar situations, or my siblings don't, or their kids don't, or, you know. And so for me, leaving Maui, it wasn't about running. Leaving Maui was about expanding. It was about expanding my knowledge so that one day I can return home and fuck. Sorry guys. It was about expanding so that one day I can return home, to give back to my island, to give back to my people and to the community that raised me. And it's sad because even coming from such a very loving family, even and having such a supportive mom and such a supportive family in general, um, Utah Utah stripped me. Like Utah impacted me in ways that I never thought it would, and I never thought it was possible. Before I continue on, I just want to say that as I'm sharing my experience about my time being here in Utah, please understand that this is my experience. These are things that I have lived through and I have gone through. Um, Please understand that I'm looking at things through my lens. And so if there is anything that I say, a part of my story, that brings up any emotions for you, I invite you to just sit with that and get curious with it. Because as I said, this is my experience. So I have recently come to terms with the fact that Utah has 100% humbled me. And not in a good way, sadly. Um, Utah humbled me not because of the cold, but because I couldn't handle the quiet isolation that happens over here. Um, I am not a part of the dominant religion here in Utah, and that alone played such a significant role in my struggles to make friends and build genuine connections out here. And for me, my experience has been that people here in Utah can be very cliquey and kind of exclusive, like excluding people. Because for me, not being from Utah and not being a part of the dominant religion, it impacted me so negatively that it got to the point where I almost wanted to move home. Like, I experienced bullying out here, And it was sad because a lot of the bullying that I experienced, like a lot of the bullying and intimidation that I experienced, was from other Polynesian women. And it was really hard because for me, coming from Hawaii, everyone is so welcoming and kind, you know? And so when I moved up here, I was kind of like Miss Aloha, you know, like, hi, I'm Keholani. Like, I just wanted friends. I just wanted to find my tribe. And I learned very quickly how hard of a task that can be out here, you know, if you don't fall into certain categories or certain boxes. Another thing that I noticed out here is that even though people would be polite, they weren't really welcoming. That makes sense. Like, I have this one experience burned into my brain where one of my friends took me to her YSA ward. YSA stands for Young Single Adults. And there was like a little activity or something, like a meet and greet afterwards. And when we were walking around talking to people, people would ask me, like, oh, what ward are you in? And me not knowing what the hell a ward is, I would say that, like, oh, what's a ward? And immediately when I would say that, people would look at me differently. The attitudes would drastically change, like literally right in front of my face. And so that was another experience of mine, is that people would be polite, but they weren't really welcoming. And for me, there was just a type of loneliness that I felt. You know, this loneliness that even though I was surrounded by so many people, I didn't feel seen. I didn't feel accepted. And so that was another huge reason why I struggled here. But over time, at some point, I stopped waiting to be invited in. I stopped waiting to get chosen, you know? I stopped trying to be palatable. I stopped trying to fit in. Like, I remember that I would do things, or I remember that I really, really tried to immerse myself in things here in Utah. And I'm not going to lie, there was a lot of things that I found really strange and really weird, but because I wanted friends, I went along with it and did it. And at some point, I stopped doing all of that. I learned to lean into friendships that felt good in my body. I found joy in slowness, in creativity, and in other women who just got it. I stopped reaching for inclusion and began reaching for alignment. And when I started doing that, that is when I slowly but surely was able to start building genuine, soulful connections with other women. Another thing that I want to touch on is, while living here in Utah, something that I learned about myself was I had the issue of being everything for everyone else, but not for myself. Meaning, I became everyone's safe space, everyone's emotional support. I became the grounded one. Before I was even a therapist, I was the therapist friend, you know? And while I enjoyed all of that, somewhere in the mix, I stopped checking in on myself. And the people around me assumed that I was okay because I was functioning, you know, because I kept going. But the truth was, I was exhausted, emotionally and physically. And worse, I did not feel held by the people in my life the way that I held them. And that's when I realized that I had no room to be soft in a role that requires me to stay solid all the time. And so, in my journey of learning how to come back home to myself, I recognized that the biggest shift wasn't learning how to be better. It was learning how to be honest without feeling guilty. I don't know if any of you struggle with that, but for me, even as a therapist, even as someone who is on her healing journey, I still do sometimes struggle with being honest without feeling guilty. And another part of that was learning how to cry, to rest, to say that I'm not okay. And again, not feel guilty about saying those things out loud. I had to learn to be okay with letting people leave my life if they were only wanting or only coming around for the strong version of myself. Because the true version of me, she's multi-layered, she's multifaceted. Okay? I'm messy, I'm soft, I'm boundaried. And I love myself now more than ever. And for me to be able to say that out loud and on video to a bunch of you who are going to watch this shit, yeah, that's a big deal. Now I want to talk about grieving the old version of me because I feel like when it comes to healing, a lot of people do not touch on the topic of grieving. Healing meant that I had to grieve the version of me that wanted to keep the peace. I had to grieve the version of me that tolerated way more than she should have. The version of me that confused burnout with purpose. Or one thing I learned that really works for me is working smarter, not harder. And so I had to let go of the version of myself that told myself, no, I need to work harder. This version of myself, she helped me survive. However, at the same time, she cannot come with me anymore. And that's okay because I can honor that version of myself and still let her go. When it comes to healing, one thing I always try to tell myself and try to understand, especially when I begin to lose friendships or, become distant with certain people in my life, is reminding myself that where I'm going, everyone who's with me cannot come with me. And that can include older versions of ourselves. So just something to keep in mind. Another hard part of the healing journey for me is allowing myself or giving myself permission to be seen. So it wasn't, setting boundaries, it wasn't moving states, but again, letting myself be fully visible. And when I say fully visible, I'm not talking just about the curated version of me or, the professional version of me, but the full layered brown girl with an opinion, a story, and a heart. I stopped asking for permission and I let myself be seen, even if it made others uncomfortable. One thing that I have truly appreciated about my old job, um, where I worked with folks, who are struggling with substance use, is I feel like as a brown girl here in Utah, that job really taught me how to have my voice or how to find my voice and how to be okay with using it. That job taught me how to show up authentically, show up as 100% Keholani, even if it makes others uncomfortable. And it took me a while to get used to it and to be comfortable with this. However, now I am very grateful to look back and be able to say that I am able to be and show up as my authentic self, even in professional settings, and not care if it makes others uncomfortable, because this is my truth. When it comes to Soulful Wahine, I want to throw out there that this podcast is more than just content. If I'm being honest with all of you, it's actually my healing in real time. All of the topics that I have touched on are topics that not only do I use for my clients, but topics that I rely on heavily for myself and my own personal experiences. I created Soulful Wahine because I didn't feel like I seen any spaces that reflected the kind of truth that I needed. For Polynesian women, for the high achieving daughters, and for the women of color who are doing the inner work in silence. I wanted to be the voice that I didn't have when I was navigating this journey alone. Now I want to reintroduce myself. I'm Keholani, a therapist, yeah, but also a daughter, a creator, and a soft woman with big feelings and even bigger dreams. I'm not here to be perfect. I'm here to be present with you. I'm here to tell the truth even when it's scary, to hold space and not perform strength, to come home to myself over and over and over. If you've ever felt like you lost yourself in trying to be what everyone else needed, this episode is for you. You do not have to shrink to be worthy. You do not have to earn rest. And you do not have to prove that your softness is valid. You are allowed to evolve. You are allowed to release who you thought you had to be. And you are allowed to come home to you. Before we close out, I just want to say thank you so much for letting me share this version of myself with you all. You know, not just the polished version, not just the therapist version, but me, Keholani. If you saw yourself in any part of this story, I hope you know that you're never alone. This path of unlearning, softening, and rebuilding, it's sacred, and I hope that you treat it as so. If this episode resonated, share it with someone you love. Leave a comment if you're feeling generous, and come interact with me over on Instagram at Soulful Wahine so we can keep this energy going. No matter where you are in your journey, you are worthy of coming home to yourself again and again and again. I love you all, and I'll see you next Friday. Mahalo and aloha.